Hello, Misfits. Today's talk is brought to you by many conversations that I've actually had with you all recently, myself included. This is maybe a good opportunity to explain that, yeah, I go through absolutely everything you guys are going through, maybe not circumstantially, but in terms of the thoughts, the questions, the doubts, the fears, etc., that go on in our minds as we're grappling with the doors and the windows. So today, I want to say the biggest reason for the talk is an overwhelming sense of responsibility. And bless you all, you have an element of stewardship in your blueprints, meaning you want to take responsibility. You want to be better. You want to be the best at what you give. You want to be good for your family, your clients. I hear this come up again and again and again. And overall, which is why you're in the blueprint process, you want to be a good steward of your blueprint and your purpose. Your people, you want to make sure that you're doing the best you can for them so that you can achieve your cause and do what's right for the world while you're here. It's an overwhelming charge at times, and I completely get why it often feels as if it is all on your shoulders. So, this question of is your blueprint evergreen is a really powerful question when it comes to this overwhelming sense of responsibility. If your blueprint is evergreen, that means it's infinite in nature, then that means that it is always operating and always acting through you, whether you're aware of it or not. And that's why the blueprint process or something like that is so important, because we want to help people understand what exactly they have in their blueprint so that they can get about using it. What's the point, you may understand, of having a blueprint if you're not using it, especially in terms of doing your purpose for your people so that you can achieve your cause? So we like the idea of your blueprint being evergreen, and we are grappling with this overwhelming sense of responsibility, which makes us look at our blueprint in a very different way. Let's say that you accept that your blueprint is a divine creation, which of course it is. If it's a divine creation, which then of course causes it to be infinite, then that sun is pouring through your skylight 24/7, 365, pouring through your skylight and then going out the doors and the windows. That's a divine event. That's the divine doing your blueprint. That means you're not doing your blueprint. This is a fascinating paradigm shift for all of us, myself included. I've known this, and yet I need to be reminded again and again and again. And I am, thanks to the conversations I have with you. When I look, or when any of us look out the doors and windows, the suggestion from the world is that, yeah, of course you're responsible. It's your business, your role in your family, father, mother, wife, husband, whatever. You're responsible for being the best you can be in that role. And as we talked about in the beginning, that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful gift that each of you have in your blueprint to want to be a good steward of your assets, if you will. However, if we again make the mistake of thinking that we're the ones that are shining this light out the doors and windows, we inevitably run across problems, such as if I'm the one that's doing my stewardship, I'm automatically limited by my personal capability. My personal capability is going to be nothing compared to God. And that's the choice, isn't it? Either we're responsible or God is responsible for shining his design through us. It's again an amazing and powerful paradigm shift. Let's go back to, okay, if I'm responsible to use my blueprint so that I can do my purpose for my people and achieve my cause, then once again, I am met with inevitable limitation, frustration, lack of fulfillment, lack of balance, lack of creativity, lack of right ideas, and I'm constantly on pins and needles. Am I making the right decision here? Am I doing the right thing for my blueprint, for my people, for my higher power, for myself? And then, of course, you're met with a series of pros and cons regarding that. um, Here, if I make this one decision, so many good things are going to happen, or maybe so many bad things are going to happen. And this is where overthinking begins. We we are fraught with overthinking, overanalyzing, trying to figure out those pros and cons as to whether or not our decision is the best for our blueprint, our people, our cause, our community, our higher power. So that is one aspect of the paradigm. So that's one type of paradigm that we could have regarding our blueprint, that it is something that we do, as if our maker designed this incredible blueprint, plopped it in our lap, and then exited stage left, leaving us with this, once again, overwhelming sense of responsibility to use it in a good way, in the right way. And it can leave us feeling isolated and separated. As entrepreneurs, we all understand what it's like to feel kind of that it's lonely at the top expression, because we can feel isolated and on our own because it's our business, our clients. And then we go even further to say it's our blueprint, our family, ours. It's ours. We need to take care of it. And again, I love that aspect in your blueprints, that you want to be good stewards of everything that you have and do. However, there's someone that's better at being responsible for this, and that is God. So this gets to the question, is blueprint a temporary function? Does it hold a temporary function? In other words, it, just like your tower, needs to be redone. Do we need to get back in, do some more research? And because, and this came up in a Misfit conversation recently, the question was, I'm looking around my blueprint and I'm seeing things that really no longer apply. And I get that. And it's a snapshot view of what actually is going on. Your blueprint is an infinite thing. So we have no idea what it's going to show us, what it's going to bring to us, what it's going to call us to do. And it's very, very important, consequently, that we make this paradigm shift and recognize, no, actually, our blueprint is our creator's blueprint, not ours. And as such, he's the one, she's the one that is moving through us with that light from the skylight. And when we get out of his or her way, we get to watch the divine genius move through our blueprint and out those doors and windows. That becomes an awe-inspiring moment when we all, myself included, shift from what can I do to, like Jesus said, what can God do, or what cannot God do? He's just doing it through you. Yay, us. So blueprint, once again, it's evergreen. I love that term. It's infinite, but it's also evergreen. It doesn't need to be redone because it's God. All those things in your blueprint are God. So I mentioned a misfit conversation that brought this question up. So I had this particular person, after he said, I'm looking across my blueprint and I'm seeing players that no longer apply, which led him to ask the question, does blueprint need to be redone? So then I explained this whole concept to him, that no, there's a paradigm shift here. We want to make sure that we understand that it's the divine moving through us that is our blueprint and not us alone. When I mentioned that paradigm shift to him, he went back to his blueprint, looked over everything again, and lo and behold, those players whom he believed were no longer applicable now became much more full of possibility. And That's that's one of the effects of having this paradigm shift from blueprint is our responsibility to know. It's actually God moving through us. Our responsibility is to watch. Now, this will come up to kind of the next topic I want to talk about in relation to your blueprint being evergreen. And that's something that you may have heard me talk about before, which is God is like a third base coach and you are the runner. So imagine that you're the runner and you're rip snorting around first base and you're heading towards second base. Well, the idea then is at that moment, as you're between first and second base, you look over to that third base coach and you watch your third base coach make whatever signals he or she is going to make to help you know which out of all the choices you have in front of you as runner, which one he or she, as third base coach, sees that you should be making. So the third base coach, if you think about where third base is, whether you're into baseball or not, the third base coach is right there by third base. From that perspective, that third base coach can see the entire field. So he or she is in a prime spot to be able to make the call. Do you slide? Do you stop at second base standing up? Do you round the bases? And then further, do you round third base and go to home? All of that information, all of that intel is coming from the third base coach, not the runner, him or herself. And you can understand why. If I, as a runner, make that decision, I might not see that the first baseman behind me has the ball and is working with the second baseman to try to get me out. Or I might not see that it was a pop fly and the outfielder is about to catch the ball, which would put me out. So lots of intel that I don't have as a runner. Same thing with this paradigm shift. Lots of intel we do not have. So it causes us to look at our blueprint and think, oh yeah, they're done. You know, about a third of my blueprint is done. It's behind me. When you look at it through this paradigm shift, that actually your blueprint is God expressing himself through you, now you see that each of those players in your blueprint, they have infinite possibility. As I mentioned in the video for the invite video for today's call, there's this lovely quote that man, we are broadening and rising higher and higher from a boundless basis. Well, that boundless basis, I believe, to be your blueprint. It's boundless. There's no end to what it can do. I discovered my blueprint in 2006. And as Bill pointed out to me just a couple days ago, that it's going to be 20 years next year. It'll be 20 years since I've known my blueprint and I've been on this journey. 20 years. And my same blueprint is sitting on my wall back there. It has not changed. And of course, my tower, we understand that the tower does change because it only represents 8 of your 100-ish players. And those 8, once again, are like the contractor's tool belt versus the contractor's toolbox. Your entire blueprint, infinite in nature, is a toolbox. So it has all your tools in it. And what God prompts us to do when we redo the tower is to go back with our tool belt, empty out those tools, and select a new 8 tools for our tool belt, because God has that crystal ball. He knows what's coming. He knows what your people need. And he moves in us, once again, to identify those new 8 players, get them into our tool belt, and get going for whatever the next, however long the next season is going to be in our lives. Because yeah, we need to choose, with God's help, out of those 100 players, which ones are most pertinent for right now. And that will continue to happen. The tower will continue to get those nudges that the tower needs to be redone. So the last point I want to make regarding this is that this is super helpful when it comes to making decisions. This paradigm shift from it's all me, which creates that overwhelming sense of responsibility, to, no, actually, it's the divine in me. It causes you to make decisions differently, or at least the invitation to make decisions differently is there. I'm sure you know what it's like making decisions when you think it's all on you. It's overwhelming, and as I mentioned at the very beginning, this is where overthinking and overanalyzing comes from because we think it's all up to us and we're oof, painfully aware of what might happen if we make the wrong decision. And that's why we spend so much time analyzing over decisions because one, we think it's all up to us, our limited intelligence, and two, we're really, really aware of what could go wrong. And we're also aware of what we don't know that could go wrong. So, yeah, it's scary business making a decision these days. So, if we successfully adopt this paradigm shift and we recognize that, no, actually, our blueprint is God moving in us, then doesn't it make sense that we would watch God as our third base coach to actually make decisions? But I have a careful caveat about this that I'm going to share here in a minute. If God designed you, let's roll back a little bit and look at some of these premises to the blueprint process. God designed you for this point in the world's history, not only with a purpose, but with all the tools that you need to achieve that purpose. God also knows the people that He's already identified that He needs you and your blueprint and your purpose to feed. He knows your community and He knows your cause. And He's moving in you all the time to do that purpose for your people and achieve your cause. Whoa. Just sitting that with that for a hot second would be an incredible prayer to start your day. Thank you, God, for moving in me so that I know what to do, how to be, whom to be with, what projects to take on. Oh, if literally all we need to do in making decisions is to watch God as our third base coach, doesn't that relieve you of that heavy sense of responsibility? It does for me. So again, that prayer is a beautiful prayer every single morning because then your reticular activating system is going to kick into gear and listen and watch for God moving in you. So if you think of the house that we drew in the very beginning of your time with the blueprint process, there's a skylight that represents your mindset. And the idea is that if your mindset is receptive, that sun then can come through the skylight, flood your entire house, and then go out your doors and windows. So, what we typically do when we think we're responsible, we effectively stand in front of the doors and windows. We don't do this on purpose and we don't do this consciously, but if we think we're the perpetrators of our own blueprint, we're effectively standing in front of the doors and windows. Imagine a superhero with a cape. Dun, 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 here I come. Ready or not. And now I'm responsible for all the good that happens out the doors and windows and all the bad that happens out the doors and windows. And we're doing it from a good space, that space of stewardship. And we're effectively blocking, or it seems to effectively block God doing it because we've convinced ourselves that we're the ones doing it. So when we realize that God is doing it, what happens to us is it backs us up against the wall, away from the doors and windows. We back up against the wall so we can watch God come through because it's so freaking cool. And it's the watching of God that actually helps us know what to do. Because, of course, in that moment, we're so in awe of His doing instead of our own that we want to make sure we're aligning with Him, which often creates a space of waiting. And as entrepreneurs, yeah, right?
Yeah,
Not so fun.
not so much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yet,
You know,
if we're
let's get things done.
exactly, yes, and also multiply our minds. Same thing,
Yeah.
multiply our minds plus an entrepreneur. We're firing on all cylinders all the time. And let's admit it, myself included, there's a little bit of an adrenaline hit when we get a lot of stuff done. Conversely, when we are forced sometimes to sit back and watch and wait and listen, it can feel painful almost. There's a great story I have about this. I don't know that now's the time, but there's a great story. It's a true story about a dude in a World War II ship. And I may have shared it with you, but it is phenomenal about the idea of waiting and listening, watching. So here's my caveat that I mentioned earlier, and then I'm going to stop talking. The caveat that I mentioned earlier is if we go to God in prayer and we say, all right, dude, I'm at a crossroads. I have a decision to make. What would you like me to do? Right away, we're coming to him with a false premise. What would you like me to do about that out there? That's a false premise. Literally, if God had a head, he'd be like, huh? Because in his view, it's all him. He's done and perfect. Nothing needs doing. And there's certainly not an us versus him versus them out there. So he'd be like, mm. So we have to go to God with the actual prayer, which is, again, thank you for showing me who you are and how you're being in my blueprint. Thank you for helping me understand you. That's exactly what the Bible suggests we do. If we focus our entire being on who God is and how he's being and what he's doing and how awesome he is, if we get to understand that dude, then the decisions, when they come, will be more effortless, more balanced, more effective, and fewer. We'll actually have fewer decisions to make. It'll just unfold as if it was already there. And that's the point. So that's my answer to is your blueprint evergreen or does it need to be redone? Hi, Ray. Hi, Bill. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Excellent.
I'm doing great. How you doing, Bill?
All right.
Nice
Sweet.
smile.
Mm, yep. All kicked back in his
Nice
chair.
warm smile.
Uh-huh. I agree.
Yeah.
You too, dude. All right. So, shares, questions, comments on what I just said.
It was interesting that you brought up the entrepreneurs being patient,
Oh,
um, because you and I talked about this yesterday,
I think so.
the third person thing,
Mm-hmm.
um, being able to look at things from that point of view,
Mm.
watching your own self,
Yep.
watching your own thinking, watching your own words that come out as a third person. What is it, Bill? It's the knowing, the knower, and the who? There's three. Knowing, the knower, and I can't think of the third one right off the top of my
I don't think it originated with me, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
head.
I have a sense of what you're talking about. I just don't have a clue as to what that third thing is, even though I'm pretty sure it's
The
something
knower. It's the knower.
something ambiguous.
It's the knower, the knowing, and the known, something
Ooh,
like that.
sure.
Um, but it's all God.
Hmm.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting. You brought up the thing about being patient. I certainly like to go 100 miles an hour, but I also like to be quiet and just observe. Um, so that you can hear or feel or let it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, that was really great, Tammy. All of that,
Hmm. Hmm.
what you said. That's all
Thank you.
very good.
So I have a question for you. I think we all know what it feels like to be in a frenzy, like frenzied activity. It actually happened to me right before the call today because I had a series of things that I needed to get done to prep for the call. And I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water and I knocked it over. It was a full glass of water, right? So water just goes everywhere. And I had these things I needed to do before I turned on Zoom and everything. I felt my horses running, like I could just feel that frenzied panic, you know. So, Ray, thank you, by the way, for what you talked about with the knowing, the knower, and the known. What do you do? Because you mentioned your own experience with this, that you love being busy and you love and you understand the need of stillness. So what do you do? What is your method for calming the horses so that you can sit back and study?
Boy, that's really interesting. You use the word horses.
Hmm.
It immediately makes me think of the Bhagavad Gita
Hmm.
and Arjuna and Krishna having a conversation, and they reference our senses as being the horses and our
Ah.
body being the chariot. And then we're the chariot, our soul is the chariot driver. It's about being in control of your senses, not them being in control of you.
Oh, nice.
And that's one way to step back and come
Hmm.
into a sense of peace is that, your mind, like you were saying, your mind is going all over the place, right? Indecision. Oh, if I do that, that'll happen. I'll do that, that'll happen. We're all over the place. We don't know what to do. But that's your senses taking control of what's going on in your head, in your mind, and being able to step back in your own mind and observing yourself, your
Hmm.
thoughts, the feeling, maybe the feeling in your body, maybe there's like a vibrating feeling even.
Hmm.
If you're quiet enough, you can probably feel that most anytime.
Hmm.
But to be in control of all of that, in other words, being in control, not necessarily of the thoughts, because the thoughts will come and go. They come, some of them hang around, some of them just go right through. But just sitting there observing. So again, the knower, the known, and the knowing. You're you're there, but you're just observing, like you are in a movie theater, just observing
Hmm.
what's on the screen, and it's not real. It's an illusion that somebody created. Very, very much a lot of fun. Can be a lot of fun, um, but it's not real. Just like everything here. It's it's uh it's here and then it's gone. Like this house that I'm in, someday it will be gone and something else will take its place. Some other soul will take my place someday. Not not literally, but I leave and something else comes in. It's always transient, uh,
Hmm.
but God is permanent or infinite, however you want to think about it. So I would say it's the being able to hold the reins of those
Hmm.
horses in your chariot. Chariot again being your body, your soul, and being in control of them and them not in control of you.
Hmm. Love the description, the analogy of the chariot, the reins, and the horses is super, super powerful. So I think all of us would say that we're aware when the horses are running or when the our emotions or our thoughts are in control of us. And we certainly are aware of times that the doors and windows seem super real. You know, you talked about how God really is the only eternal, the only real, and the doors and windows are the transitory sense. But man, when we're in a state of running, that seems real.
Oh,
So,
definitely,
how, what was that?
definitely.
So, what do you physically do? You talked about being able to take the reins and not let them control you and get back to a sense, anchor yourself in a sense of what's real. Look up at the skylight. What do you physically do? You know, let's say you've got a massive to-do list, tons of meetings, and you don't necessarily have the time to sit and meditate for 30 minutes or whatever. So what would you do in that situation to take those reins back?
I would stop doing whatever I was doing and give myself 30 to 60 seconds just to get resettled in my own physiology, in my own mind. Just literally stop. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I always like to bring up my my buddy Carl Honore, who travels the globe talking to people about slowing down. He wrote a book years ago titled In Praise of Slowness.
Mm-hmm.
And not to be slow down so that you just kind of hang around and are a couch potato, but slow down so that you can be thoughtful, you know, thoughtful. Um, that's a lot of times when I feel myself getting overly excited, almost feeling like I'm out of control,
Mm-hmm.
like going so fast. Like I said, I like to get things done. You know, I got to get this done. People want to have a meeting. I'm like, what do you mean? We're just doing this little thing. Just do it, you know. Um, and I can get, I, I've been known to get wound up about that. And if I sense that I'm, or maybe maybe what it is that's coming to my mind is I sense that I'm all focused on myself
Mm-hmm.
as being the one in charge.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sign to stop and just stop. I mean, you can be on a walk, you can be in a car and you could just pull off, you could just stop. But most of us don't want to do that, you know, because oh, we got to keep going, we got to get this done. No, you really don't. It, you know, down the road, even as much as an hour later or a day later or years later, it won't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself the chance to feel the peace and assuredness of something bigger than ourselves, meaning God, is
So,
really in
so
charge. Really, that's who's really in charge, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about.
for sure. I like the idea too. You're saying, you know, stop and you actually won't be hurt if you stop. Obviously, sometimes you can't, you know, you're in the middle of a meeting or whatever. But I think you're right in that we tend to think, I just need to get this done. I don't have time to stop. But what you're suggesting that I totally love is that if we do this paradigm shift that I was talking about earlier and we recognize we're not the ones that are doing it, even if we just give ourselves 30 to 60 seconds, as you say, to remind ourselves that it's just God doing that through us, then our doing is going to be so much more enlightened and most likely efficient. So not only will we get it done in time, but it'll be done with more peace, more creativity, more longevity, effectiveness, etc. So it's
Yeah,
really, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and it and if you want to really drive home the thought of us not being in charge, our physiology, how I have to ask the question, how is it operating? What is causing us to operate? What is that energy that is in our body that is allowing our heart to beat, everything to work properly, be able to speak? What is that? It ain't us. And in
It's a
any moment, it can be shut off,
it's a great point.
you know.
So let me ask you, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you go, you go.
Let me ask you one more question, and then Bill, I'm curious to hear what you would have to say about this as well. All right, so let's say that I have the discipline, which of course we all do, to stop for that 30 to second time frame. Where do you direct your thoughts during that 30 to 60 seconds in order to reconnect with the divine?
I'm sorry. I got I gotta shut these notifications off. They just keep coming across the screen.
So the question is,
Distractions.
yeah,
What was the question?
the question is when you allow yourself to stop for that 30 to 60 seconds, and because you know that the horses are running, that they're in control of you and not the other way around, where do you direct your thinking during that 30 to 60 seconds so that it is effective? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say that I think of God.
Mm,
I think about him. That's really what I do. And I'm not saying that because we're on this kind of a call. I'm just
hmm
saying, literally, that's what I do because that's the safe harbor for me in the sense that I can be assured that he's there or she's there or it's there.
hmm
Um, that's what I think about. That's where I go.
It's super cool because you mentioned that's a safe harbor for me. And I think that's a powerful point to make in this conversation, that we each have our own safe harbors.
That's right.
I remember a dude from California. He was a surfer. He loved to surf. And for him, that did it for him. That was his access point. Of course, you can't always go surf, but he did as often as he could because it was on that surfboard that he felt the presence of God. So I really appreciate you bringing up that point. And it's just a great nod to the fact that, yeah, what works for one of us doesn't work for all of us.
Right.
But it is important to figure out what does work for you. What brings you that sense of peace?
Yeah, I say it like that because it's not my job to convince anybody.
Mm, mm,
Just because I say it's where I go doesn't mean that you need to do the same thing.
yeah.
It may or may not help, you know, but I'm not in the business of trying to convince anybody. I'm just at that moment, I'm just there for me.
Hmm.
And that somebody might think, well, that's selfish. Well, yeah, why not be selfish, with me?
Hmm.
Nobody else is going to do that for me
Yeah.
at the level that I'm going to do it for me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's where I go and I say it like that. It's for me. It's and
Hmm.
not that other people can't have that. Um, but you could have a surfboard, you could have a bike trip, a walk. Uh, Brandon, I think, likes to go for runs.
Hmm.
I don't know what Bill likes to do,
That's the next question.
Hey, I'm very sorry, but I've got to jump.
No problem.
I've got to go to another discussion.
Well, thank you for being a part of ours.
Yeah, thank you for being part of my afternoon. Good to see you, Bill.
Yep,
We got to catch up.
yep.
All right. Love you guys.
Love you too. Thanks, Ray.
Bye-bye.
All right. So, Bill, you knew I was going to come to you. I know that this is a study of yours too. So, what would you say in regards to this entire issue? That Ray presented, of taking 30 to 60 seconds, pulling aside, making sure that those reins aren't controlling you. What is your approach?
Well, it's similar. I mean, basically the way, first off, you have to recognize that you need to do it.
Mm,
A lot of times, at least for me, because I can tell you, I don't do it all the time. Uh, it goes to who the questioner is, you know, who the observer is, and all the other good stuff that we hear about. But when you realize that you're not going to make a decision that is going to be resourceful. And you'll know that because usually it's backed by some kind of emotional response.
Mm.
Somebody says something that hits your hot button. And before you know it, you've had diarrhea of the mouth for 10 minutes. And I know that if it happens and nobody's around, then like I said, you have to acknowledge first off that something's happening. I mean, it always comes back to when we do meditation, and Ray can talk about this too when he hears the rest of the recording. That you sit there and you just watch your thoughts, and then the question always comes up: well, where are the thoughts coming from?
Mm.
Where are they originating? Well, it's your mind acting on the urgency of the day, whatever the preoccupation at the moment is.
Yeah.
And most meditation attempts to try and quiet that. I tend to let it go because eventually it runs out. Breathing is a good thing to focus on. If you're going to do something, breathing is a good thing to focus on. And there's all kinds of methods of breathing. Everything from breathe in 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, let out 8 seconds. And typically, if you combine that with some sort of mantra or a saying like I'm open to the universal divine love,
Mm.
and just repeat that. You're definitely taking the focus off of yourself and your thoughts.
Mm.
Things tend to quiet when you do that. But it's difficult when you're in the middle of an argument, or you're in the middle of a debate, or you're in the middle of a presentation and somebody asks a question. So, I mean, we're strange creatures that we have all of these different voices surrounding us at different times. A lot of times the answer is in the quiet, so you definitely want to get away from everything that's competing for your attention, which is everything from your health to the screen messages that are passing across your computer while you're trying to pay attention to a lecture. So I think it's different for everybody. You have to find what works for yourself. I think once you start to break things down and realize that not all the communication you're getting is useful.
Mm.
So I guess I just, like I said, if I'm going to do something mechanical, it's probably going to stop and just breathe and just watch my breath. Let whatever's happening happen. It's not going to change anything. I'm not going to change it. And wait till things calm down in your head. Where your emotions calm down, where you get grasp of reality again, where you're not being distracted by whatever is vying for your attention, because it could be any number of things. I'm just not that brilliant to know whether it's the devil, whether it's God, whether it's whoever it is, because I just don't know. I know sometimes you can talk with it, and when you do, you can ask it questions, kind of like what I was talking about when I was playing with AI,
Mm. Right.
asking it questions about itself, asking it questions about its personality,
Mm-hmm.
its understanding of its own consciousness. How you know
Mm-hmm.
you're real, and see what comes back.
So are you suggesting even to have to ask those questions of the emotions and thoughts that are racing through your mind?
Absolutely, sure. You have a right to. It's already in your head. It's in your attention. So why not?
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want me to do?
Hmm.
And if I do that, what happens then?
Hmm. What happens? This is cool because it's a unique response from what Ray said. When you have had that experience where you're basically interviewing, like you interviewed AI, you're interviewing the emotions and thoughts as they're running through. when you grab a hold of one and you're asking it those questions, what has your experience been like?
Well, if I ask it a question that would reveal too much about its origin or its its purpose, a lot of times it will cease in and of itself. And that's the answer.
Interesting.
That's the answer. It's kind of like, people often test knowings that they get about things by asking, so where is this coming from?
Hmm.
You know, is it coming from me? Somewhere in me? Is it coming from someone else or something else? Where is it coming from? I know that from what I understand, at least anyhow, from what little study I've spent time with in the Bible, is that you can often question what its motives are and what its origin is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can use your own understanding of your God to test whether it's really something that's coming from something that's beneficial.
That you believe in.
Well, you can look. I believe in the devil. I believe that
Mm.
I believe one exists. I believe that there's an opposing force, I should say. I don't know where its origins are. I don't know whether it's just another facet of God.
Mm.
I mean, because if you look at the Old Testament, I think Satan is discussed only a couple times there. You don't get much about Satan until the New Testament. And in the Old Testament, he was considered the adversary. He was considered the prosecutor, the person in God's staff that basically would prosecute the individual.
Mm.
That's where you get the whole notion of the testing of Job.
Mm.
Yeah. I know one thing my mom always told me: don't pray for patience. Not a good thing to pray for. There's only one way to get that.
Your mom's a smart woman.
Yeah, she was like that. Things, things that she would come up with that were along those lines. But again, the mechanical thing is really pretty simple. You do have a certain level of control, and if you don't, that's even more of a red flag that the origin of that thing is something else.
Mm.
Some people will say it's the ego. The ego needs to assert itself because it needs to be relevant. And if you do things that make it irrelevant, then that threatens its
Yeah,
existence,
freak
and
out.
consequently, they'll fight you back.
Yeah.
It'll do things to subvert whatever enterprise you're engaged in at the time. So, but I mean, like I said, I'm no good. I'm probably the last person to ask about some of this stuff, other than the fact that I've had a lot of experience with it and failed at it many, many times.
Hmm. I appreciate that.
So, and continue to, even if I'm talking about it, doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
It's just difficult to separate the things that are there. I mean, in that book, I mean, I think I've told you about it, called "I Am That."
Mm-hmm.
That book, it's a huge book. Ultimately, what he's getting at there is that who are you? Who are you? What are you? What aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So asking those kinds of questions are pretty intense. But in the end, the idea is to get to understand who that thinker is, where those thoughts are coming from behind all the chatter that's going on. Who's the observer?
Mm-hmm.
If in meditation they talk about just observe your thoughts. Well, fine. Who's that? And where's that person go when you go to sleep at night or die? Where's that person? Where does that entity go? I'm becoming a rapid believer that we don't really die
Mm-hmm.
because we're energy, and energy, you can't destroy energy. Just it changes form, but that's about all it does.
Mm-hmm.
So I often wonder that maybe our purpose here ultimately is to experience the corporeal presence and figure out how to be resourceful in spite of all the distractions that we get as corporeal beings.
Mhm.
And maybe, maybe the next generation, next iteration of Bill Hughes doesn't have the name Bill Hughes. It's just whatever exists here that calls itself Bill Hughes now, just sort of evaporates and it gets absorbed into the bigger ocean of presence and being,
Mm.
or moves on to some other test, some other
Mm.
learning experience. So it could be we're here just as a school.
Mm.
We're here to learn what it's like to be in this particular moment of time. That's that's an interesting concept. That's why when movies come out like The Matrix, you kind of
No.
there's a spookiness to that. But like I said to you before, this whole the thing about Blueprint in general is that it attempts to focus on what is in your presence right now
Mhm.
that you use in a way that's unique to you. That's productive.
Mm.
That's productive. I mean, even the stuff that's not productive is actually productive, but in a different way. But the stuff that we do, we call talent, and particularly if it's talents that we enjoy.
Mm.
I mean, that's the stuff that is unique to us. And even if somebody else has a similar talent, in all likelihood, it's being biased by something else that makes it completely different.
Mm. Agreed, yeah, because in studying people's blueprints, I absolutely see similar players. But because the rest of the players are unique, it makes that single player that looks like it's the same between your two blueprints very unique.
Well,
So, yeah.
we've talked about a number of things over time, and I know we talked about truth at one point in time. I heard a really great conversation the other day. So, what exactly is truth? And one guy was talking to the other guy, and he said, "Well, I've heard that I think it was Henry Ford or Napoleon Hill, or one of the thinkers of the 19th and 20th century, that said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
I've heard
That's your
that.
truth."
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, if it ultimately cements the outcome that you experience, I don't know how much more truth you can get to that.
Yep. Agreed. And back to that paradigm shift we were talking about regarding your blueprint. If I think I can, that's one thing. If I know that God can, that's something entirely different. It just really increases one's confidence when you look at it that way.
Well, if you can uncover the fact that being a creation of God, and if God is infallible,
Mhm.
God's creations are all perfect, then so are you. Now
Talk about truth.
you may not be perfect in the sense of execution of that talent or that capability, but then again, too, is if that's part of the learning experience, then what better teacher can you have, and how much more perfect could it be?
Agreed. Back to your quote about if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. But if you think you can or you might, or that God is doing it through you, you're most likely going to take advantage of opportunities that you
Yeah,
previously would
no,
have
you,
turned
you can't
down.
you can't think that. You have to know it.
Mm. Go on.
You have to know it. You can't think it. You have to know it. The think suggests doubt.
Mm.
It's not, you have not formulated a result here. I think I can do that, which means you haven't done it. So how do you know? Now, when I know I can do it, that's a totally different story altogether.
Yeah. I know for myself, if I have not done something before, so back to this man is broadening and rising higher and higher from a boundless basis. So if I see an opportunity that's coming my way and I look at my blueprint and I feel drawn to that opportunity, then for me, to be truthful, I would say, I think I can. But again, when I know when I'm doing this paradigm shift and realizing that God is doing it in me, then I can say, I know that God can. And then it's all about this putting my back up against the wall and watching. Is God moving in me towards that end or no? So I think there's actually a quite profound difference that comes from saying, I think I can, which is
But
certainly,
you can certainly ask for validation of some of that stuff. That's the reason why if you have a holy reference that you go to for that kind of advice, I don't care what it is. If it's a Bible, that's good. It could be any of the major books. But if you go there and you get verification, well, verification can come from the movie.
mm,
A series of narrative will come across that you'll say, that's ironic that that would come through just when I'm thinking
yeah,
about that.
yeah, yeah.
But to say that God can't work that way is kind of an interesting comment because what do you mean? How do you know God can't work that way?
How work what way? I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
Well, some people would say that doesn't validate the message at all by virtue of the synchronicity and the fact that the message seems to be relevant because of the question you asked.
Oh, I see.
And it came from the movie. Or
Hmm.
it came from your worst enemy,
Right.
which
Or
it
a
could.
or a bird, watching a bird fly on the air currents.
The meaning of whatever it is could come from virtually anything. Look, even in the Bible, they were casting lots to get information,
Mm-hmm.
and they were doing it direction of the angels. So I don't want to hear anything about people that read cards or spin wheels or do whatever they do to somehow or other get a bead on what needs to get done,
Mm-hmm.
because it was all done before, and none of this stuff is wrong.
Yeah.
I just
Well,
think that when you get an answer, you do have the obligation to question the conclusion that you arrived at as a result of that answer.
mm. Say a little bit more about that, and then we should wrap up.
Well, if you have a conclusion that you're making off of a so-called response that you're getting in response to a prayer, a
Hmm.
question you've asked, whatever it is that you know, I I don't know what you want me to do. Show me a sign. Please show me a sign. Invariably, it's going to come, and it's going to come from wherever it decides to come from. It's not going to be
Mm.
as you necessarily recognize it immediately. In some cases, you might miss it altogether. That story about the guy that was caught up in a flood and climbed to the top of his house, and he asked God to help him get off the house, and guy came by in a helicopter, and he said, "I'm waiting for God to help me." And God flies off. Somebody else comes along, throws him a rope. No, no, I'm waiting for God. Anyhow, at the end of the day, he dies in the flood. Shows up at the pearly gates, and he said, "Where were you? Why weren't you helping me?" So I sent you a helicopter. I sent you a guy with a rope and a boat. What's wrong with you? Why didn't you pay attention?
Yeah, it's a great story.
So, I mean, I don't know that I told it right, but that's fundamentally what a lot of this stuff is. But getting back to your original query, what do I do? Lately, what I've done more than anything else is usually go to some form of meditation that usually starts out with breath, following
Hmm.
the breath.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. And I like the line too, the idea of following a quote or something while you're doing that. That's very helpful. I think that physical act is helpful in anchoring the brain. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today, Bill. And for the rest of you, our next Misfit collab will be December 10th at noon Pacific. And otherwise, I hope you guys have a great rest of your month. Go out and blueprint. Thanks, Bill.